for joining RESHAPE today. We have an awesome guest here of Tim Zimmerman. Tim and I have met recently, probably in the last year, but a lot of our mutual interests aligned about how we're using technology to change the way job sites work. Tim will be jumping in here along the way here. I'm going to switch to, so Tim, give me a little bit of background on yourself. I know you gave me 25 plus years in the industry. You've got tremendous experience. You don't mind just recapping here in about a minute?
Sure. About 18 years on the MEP consulting, bid spec engineering firm side of things. And then about 7 years ago, I made the switch to the contractor side. So it was very, all that experience from spec writing, producing bid documents, played very well into what we needed to achieve from the contractor side of things. So, and then I was working for a contractor for about a year and doing design build projects. And then that's when BIM kind of blew up here locally in our market. And plumbing was my area of expertise. So they said, hey, we need some guy that understands sloping, understands all the rules, the codes, design of moving all the stuff around to make it fit in a model. So that's kind of how I got involved in the whole BIM modeling, clash detection, resolution,
Okay. Yep. You'll hear more about Tim's experience as we go along. It'll bleed through in our conversation. And that's why we invited Tim today, just because of the incredible experience he has and what he's been able to do in his career. But let's jump to market trend real quick. This is why we're having this conversation today. This was a poll done by the AGC in the last year, and 72% of contractors believe labor is going to be their issue this year. There's going to be other factors, but labor is the one thing. And Tim and I have gone over this many times over the last year of us working together, that we just can't find people. We want to do work. We could chase more work. We could do more if we had more skilled people. Any thoughts on that, Tim?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, it's funny. We have a sister company, and the president actually said, it's cheaper ink and paper, or cheaper than craft. So what that tells me is CAD draftsmen, modelers, Revit techs. That's kind of the trend that everybody's trying to achieve to overcome the labor shortages, by putting all this stuff in-house, in our hands, do all the heavy lifting, the heavy thinking, pre-planning. So when the craft hit the job site, all they have to do is install the parts and pieces where drawings identify them to be placed.
All right, let's jump in, Tim. We're already interviewing Tim, so let me switch that. So Tim, you've already hit on one of the avenues that you guys are looking to attack this. So that was going to be my first question: is what are you guys doing to attack this labor shortage?
Well, it's every single job we're doing. Even if we don't have 3D models, we are obtaining AutoCAD files. And even if we don't have AutoCAD files, we are even creating AutoCAD drawings from PDFs to allow, we have a Trimble group that we will at least lay out underground mains, do some things like that to take the string layouts away from the installing craft. I can lay out with my 2 Trimble guys on site underground piping in 8 hours what it would take a craftsman doing with old school technology with strings and a tape measure, probably 3 days to do in 8 hours with my 2 guys and their Trimble equipment. So right there, right off the bat, just underground. It even works for excavation, anything. They go in, they identify dots on dirt. The excavators can go in, don't even have to waste any time. We know right where everything's going. We do a first pass, then they go back when we need to really rough in very accurately, water closet outlets, riser locations, things that are buried in walls that have to be super accurate and have to be hidden. So you kind of do it again, but you also identify busts in the buildings and communicate that with the GC and the design team. We do all these drawings and models, and everything's perfect, everything's straight, concrete's flat, steel's 90 degrees and perpendicular. That is not the way anything gets built. We all know that have done this for any length of time. So there's little variances. Steel has a certain tolerance, which is pretty wide. And then some things have a tighter tolerance, like my plumbing system. So in order to get all that stuff to work, you've got to work together as a complete team. And, the design team has to be a little lenient. The GCs have to understand what's going on. And as long as everybody's really honest and communicating, solutions are pretty easily found that work for everybody.
Yeah. You bring up an interesting one. I've been in this industry for over 20 years myself, and in the BIM world, probably 2/3 of it. And the real world blows up a lot of BIM efforts. Like, if you think about just the tolerance of deflection of steel on a project, what is it usually, the inch to an inch and a half they're allowed? In our world, that might be a mile for BIM,
Well, it is. I mean, I have a project right now that is almost literally a mile long in Indiana. And it is that type of situation where the deflection has created a situation where the framers are kind of pulling off some tip-up walls. That's never really accurate. So we've worked with them, tried to identify common places, and it's been a struggle, but we've got to work together to make everything work,
So next question I got here is, you guys are a big company, and I've worked with you long enough, and you guys have some, big dollars and budgets to work with. I would say big, but you have a little bit more money. What are, and there's a wide range of investments in technology that you can use. What are some of the ones that are no-brainers that you're doing now? That even though they might have they might have a first cost that might be a hurdle to get over. What are the ones that you just can't live without right now?
The number one would be layout equipment. We use the Trimble. There are other competitors to that product, but we prefer that. We're used to working with that, so we do that in the 3D laser scanning. We have our own in-house. We have the newest technology, TX7, I believe. It uses the same layout pad as the Trimble layout team does. So it keeps track of your laser scans as you're moving through, and you can see everything. And those are especially handy in renovation projects and additions where you've got to capture existing steel. One example would be if you're adding a generator in an existing engine room and you have an enormous amount of existing piping, flues, and you want to get in and out. Again, this is where the efficiency comes in. I can produce a set of drawings. If I go in and laser scan for 4 hours, I can come back with a model that I can pull into Revit and produce a set of drawings where I can miss everything that's in that room.
Yep.
And my installer we can generate hangers from that with schedules, pipe. We can assist the estimators in ordering material and how we want to phase this. If it's a large scaled thing and broken up into many phases, we can help chunk that out in Revit. You can add parameters to things, and we do that here at GEMCO. We assist our PMs and our superintendents in ordering this material in the most desirable fashion, so they don't get a semi-trailer full of fittings. They might only get what they need in area A and B, because that's what we're doing for the next 2 months instead of the entire job. So it also helps with material handling. I mean, the efficiencies go completely down the line to even a laborer that's handling your material on site and moving it around from a trailer to where the work's being done. If they move it once, that's an efficiency. Before we were doing that, we were moving material 4 or 5 times on a job site.
Yep. The two pieces of equipment you just mentioned, for those viewers that haven't ever bought one of those are probably both north of 40, 50 grand a piece. Just to encourage people watching, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, no, our investment, the company's investment, they made it just before I came on, actually. The president at our sister company, Real, Steve Roy, knew the payback of that stuff, so they pulled the trigger. It was well north of $250,000. So I mean, that's just what it takes to get the stuff done.
for the viewers that are watching that, you see that and you cringe at it. You can take an approach similar to me. I've never bought those pieces of equipment because I don't have the deep pockets like that. We're a small consulting business. So you can rent that stuff, and you can get good partnerships. It requires a little bit of training, but you can rent some of that stuff for $300 to $500 a day, and get the kickback without having to write a big check. So if you're watching this, don't get alarmed by that stuff. There's ways around it.
Right. And GEMCO, I'm sorry, I got to plug us here, but
no, that's why you're doing
we also, GEMCO is a national construction company and design build. And, part of my responsibility here is growing our technology and trying to make it an independent, profitability center. So, we're willing to go anywhere in the country and do laser scanning. We don't even care if we get the work, if we can utilize our technology to increase our work here, we're willing to do that. So if anybody needs any assistance with any of that, feel free.
You're hitting on a couple things that are BIM related, but what are some other stuff? We're not here to just plug BIM. What are some other things you guys are doing in the field that maybe BIM sets the stage for, but it has a foundation to that, but it's something that's really helping your teams in the field?
Well, so something it's kind of grown out of it, but so it's more of a logistical thing with the shipping with our vendors. So again, as we're able to break these projects down into smaller pieces, I've always used the analogy, it's like an elephant ear, it's like a piece of pizza or an entire pizza. You don't eat the whole thing at once, you take bites of it at a time. So the same goes with our suppliers. We can work with those suppliers and they can palletize certain amounts of work and identify those with pieces of paper, spray paint, however they want to mark the stuff. So as soon as it shows up on a job site, again, it goes right to that room, right to that area. It's just simple things that you can do that can make a great impact. I hope I'm answering your question.
No,
I kind of hit on that earlier, but that's kind of an answer.
Mm-hmm. This is all coming back to the labor shortage at the end of the day. You can't go get 10 more guys from a hall, to be plumbers or HVAC. They're just not there. At least the good ones that you need, right? So we have to be proactive somehow in the planning phase to build efficiencies in our team. Is there anything like I've seen as we're leaning towards prefabrication, seen all kinds of projects like Miami Valley Hospital that Skanska did about 10 years ago they had studies where if they could build stuff in a shop, they could possibly do 3 times the work in a day because they were in a controlled environment like an assembly line. That takes a lot of planning to get there. That just doesn't happen overnight. But like you're saying, you can take these small bites to get closer and closer and closer.
Well, let me just touch on the prefab aspect. So in my experience, I have been involved. Right now at GEMCO, we don't have really the square footage with either one of our facilities to do the complete prefabrication. Plus, we do nationwide work, and we don't own our own trucking fleet. So again, from a company, you've got to step back and look at that. Say, okay, we could make all this stuff in a shop. We could buy a warehouse and make it all, but what's it going to cost us to truck it from point A to point B? We do some common sense things especially for our local projects where we will I've got a perfect example here. I worked with the plumbers on the job here locally where we were putting together gas train assemblies we have a project that's got about 150 rooftops on it. So we were going to prefab all these, gas regulators, gas valve unions, this whole assembly in a shop and then get those out. But they're only about 4 or 5, 6 feet long. And we can do that. We can put it in the back of a box truck and get all those to the job site fairly easily. It's an hour from our shop. So those kind of things, but to go full blown in it just doesn't make sense. And man, I'll be honest, the amount of technology and understanding that it takes to go from a BIM model to a fabrication model is tremendous. You have got to have dedicated craft that have installed this stuff for 20 years sitting right next to the guy running the computer, because I haven't put the stuff in. I mean, I haven't worked in a union hall for 20 years and know every little part and piece that they put together to make some little assembly for a takeoff off of an iron main to a copper branch. There's all kinds of little things that happen between there. And when you're trying to do that prefabrication workflow out of a BIM model, you got to have all those little parts and pieces figured out. And it's very difficult. Even with Siskiyou will get you close, but it still doesn't get you across the finish line. You're going to have a resource that is dedicated to assist your team getting you there, or you're just going to have a lot of problems. It's very hard to do. It's very hard to accomplish.
Let me ask you about this, because there's a hospital, I'm in East Lansing, Michigan, and there's a $500 million hospital that's going up in our town. And I was talking to the owner's representative who I used to work with as a construction manager, and he's convinced that maybe you don't have to prefab, but the idea of co-locating your teams to do maybe prefabricated mechanical racks. So you don't have to take the BIM model to level 400 or whatever, but you get the idea and then you build it together as a team. Have you seen things like that coming up on some of your projects?
Absolutely. We do prefab on site is what we do. So just an example, the same project where we were prefabbing all these gas regular assemblies, we were able to provide enough information on our shop drawings that they acted as spools, and the welders on the larger bore pipe were able to prefab sections and then get them up on the roof with a crane so they wouldn't be stuck on the roof welding. Because you have complication welding on a roof. You got to protect the roof materials and all that kind of stuff. It's snowball. So the more work you can do on the ground, the better it is. So, they were making spool pieces and craning them up. You do 6 or 7 welds on the ground and then 1 connection up on the roof. So you limit that work up that high, 70 feet in the air.
Yeah.
We definitely see that.
Yeah. And so a lot of this stuff is just, it doesn't have to be, some of the stuff you don't even need BIM for. You just need some good planning, right?
Right.
So back to the planning, we talked prior to this about how you can't go find more people. We're not gonna be able to necessarily go, some of the stats I saw there, our construction industry is 1 million people short for 2021, You're not gonna find 1 million people. I've got a growing son who's, 13, who doesn't want to stop playing video games, or, his dream is to be a YouTuber. He's not going to get a tool belt out. He's not going to go get a tool belt, The kids just aren't there that are coming up. So what are you doing how are you guys molding your planning? Because obviously it sounds like it comes from a planning team. What are you looking for in that team, and how are you shaping them so that you can make up these labor shortages in the field?
Well, I've got a couple answers for you. GEMCO we are actively involved in the ACE mentorship program, which locally here in Indianapolis, it's through a local high school. And with the coronavirus kicking off again, we're not going to be able to do things in person again probably this year, but the engineering director, Mark Nordmeyer, has been involved in this in many years and many companies that we both have worked at. It's the first year I've had time because my family is growing. We've only have one left at home. The others have kind of flown the coop, left the nest, So I've got time to give back and actually invest in the future, man. And they have engineering programs at school. They call them engineering programs, but some kids that are interested in this stuff. And then we go in with real world examples and applications and kind of try to get their interest sparked in it, to at least get them into college, And we also we hire a lot of interns here, and we have a pretty good track record. We got some really, really good ones that are and they stay with us while they're going to school and work for us, and they're still very highly productive, produce a lot of drawings for us, man, and they're happy. We try to teach them, we really actually think about what we want to teach them so it doesn't contradict what they're learning out of the book or from the professor. You know what I'm saying? From a mechanical perspective, running loads and heat transfer and more of the technical aspects of heating and air conditioning that we do in this industry. It's a little different than it is out of a book. And, they don't teach hardly any of this in school. It's just kind of a learn on the go as you as you work someplace. So we target specialty interns. Basically, we make good hires there. We also have a lot of people that bring their family in. I mean, we've got brothers, sons, daughters, I mean, really, if we're willing to teach what we need done, if we've got a good employee that can show up every day and put in a good day's work, that's really all you need as a starting point. And I think a lot of people are kind of coming around to that because they all understand there's just a shortage. So you've got to be flexible.
Yeah.
And kind of open your horizons a little bit. Back when I was hiring a lot of individuals to manage the workflow I had earlier, I mean, I was hiring people that didn't even know how to open Revit, had never even heard of it. I just felt like they would be able to accomplish it, and they did. You can teach somebody what needs to be done in a couple days. It's not overly complicated.
One interesting thing I saw happen probably a couple years ago. I've got a sheet metal company here in town I got a great relationship with, and they started realizing that some of their people that their bodies couldn't keep up in the field ended up transitioning back into the office and being incredible assets. Like one guy blew out his knee. He was one of their sheet metal foremen, blew out his knee, thought his career was over. They convinced him, hey, you don't know how to use any of the software, but we'll teach you that. Your brain is incredibly valuable to us for planning.
Absolutely. I know that would be the plan for a lot of companies, but right now you've got to have those guys running jobs. I mean, the experience just is not there. I mean, you've got temps on jobs and nothing against those guys. Those guys are travelers and they're hungry for work, and that's a hard life, man, to live. But you've got to have people there managing that job. I'm sure every company's struggling with the same thing. So unfortunately, that skill set, as good as it does sound, Art, I mean, we all have that vision of bringing those guys back into the office, teaching the younger guys the reality of the situations in the field. But a knee getting blown out, he's probably still beneficial out there in the field pointing his finger, but it's situational. It's all situational.
Well, this has been good. I mean, for those that are watching, at the end of the day, there's no magic answer of how to get more workers, but what Tim and I have learned in our career is you got to find out a way to leverage technology. That's probably the easiest solution to head this off. It's going to take a lot of solutions, but that's probably one of the easiest. So I think you would agree too, right?
Oh yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, let me transition to our next phase here. This has been a pleasure, Tim. I know you're going to have something to say about this because we were talking about this a minute ago here. This next piece here is just looking at some of the stuff that's out there. A lot of these reality capture and these virtual reality things, a lot of them seem gimmicky, more for marketing, and Tim and I would agree to some extent. But these things are, I think, early on in their life cycle, and we've even tested them internally ourselves. Like, for example, the HoloLenses. They're not there for the accuracy, but the vision. I mean, I see it as technology gets tighter, the tolerances, and Tim and I were saying, like, for field, my vision, I would love one day, and we tried it about a year ago, to do layout with these lenses. And it was incredible because I was doing the Trimble layout, and one of my guys, Cole, was actually doing the HoloLens. And Cole was set up, ready to go in a matter of like 5 minutes. I was still dinking around with getting the tripod set up, getting the Trimble laid out, getting it all calibrated. In about 20 minutes, he's just waiting on me. And one of the challenges is always the Trimble thing was pinpointing 1/16 of an inch accurate, which is what you really want to be. The lens was off by a foot sometimes in some places. So this industry is going to change, but I would keep my eye on these things. The entry cost of these lenses is under $5,000 for software, and maybe $5,000 to $8,000 for software and a lens. But it's got some promise that they can dial it in. Tim, what are your thoughts? I mean, light it up. That there's a lot of critics out there. But it's something to keep an eye on.
Well, in the past, I have realized this as we did try to use it to lay out hangers. Instead of like shooting a Trimble dot on the floor and then using a laser to get it up to the deck. We did put a man in a lift and try to utilize this thing with our model,
Mm-hmm.
the HoloLens. It just wasn't accurate enough yet. It is a powerful tool, to give let the owner or the GC walk around. You can show them what to expect, what everything's going to look like, what's going to be buried in walls, where they're going to need access panels, things like that. Even for the architects to see, hey, this is where we have a valve set or pressure reducing valve station or something in a water main in a high rise. If you don't like it, let us know now. Maybe we can, scoot a couple things around. But those are the applications I kind of see it being useful for now. But I do know the technology's coming. They're constantly working on it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you think about it, this can get where they want it to go.
Mm-hmm.
I've been talking to my teams. I'm like, what's the point of producing a shop drawing at this point? Because you're just producing a shop drawing to give you dimensions and bottom of pipe elevation. If this thing works, you don't need that step. So you start to alleviate steps, which saves man hours. So these are little things to keep your eye on as it goes forward. I will say with the HoloLens, I have seen it. I have seen examples of the thing work for prefab, where they're building racks of pipe and things like that. But then again, you've got to have someone on the back end of that understand the softwares, understand spooling, understand a lot of stuff to put that rack together correctly, per specs and plans. I'll share one last story here on this. This is actually, I learned as much from my mistakes as I do from all my victories, probably more. We were doing the state capitol. We were drawing the electrical for a power plant that was being added to Michigan State Capitol. And I hadn't produced the concrete pad drawings yet for the generators. And the guys in the field just ran and put them in. And I didn't know this. And I got a call from the foreman one day and he said, hey, can you come look at our generator pads? The construction manager swears they're in the wrong place. And at first I called their bluff and I said, there's no way they know. There's absolutely no way they know because I haven't even given you a drawing. They're not going to pick that up from a walkthrough. He said, well, please come out and look. And I went out and looked. And first of all, I said, how'd you even get the locations? They're like, well, we scaled the drawing. I said, well, we weren't ready yet, So they did install them. But what had happened was the construction manager was testing these HoloLenses for marketing purposes, and they just happened to be set up in that room because it's a nice little clean room for video and all that stuff to sell it to their clients. And they turned to their left and they looked at the housekeeping pad and they said, oh, it's 3 feet off. And sure enough, they were absolutely right. So there's some value in catching stuff like that. And it's only going to get better,
Oh, yeah.
But, well, guys, I appreciate Tim. I greatly appreciate your time. Always a pleasure to talk with you. You have a tremendous amount of knowledge. I would encourage people, if you watch this show and you got questions, Tim, I know you'll take their calls. Like you said, you're willing to help other companies even if you don't get the services. So I would push you guys to connect with Tim Zimmerman with GEMCO. He's on LinkedIn. And again, Tim, thank you for your time. And look forward to talking to you more in the future. It's been a pleasure.
Wow. Thank you, Art. Thanks again.
All right. Goodbye.